I'm starting with my favorite French fig tart. I know, it sounds complicated, but it's really easy to make. And it begins with my favorite foolproof pastry. And this is all you have to do. First, I put 2 cups of flour into the bowl of a food processor fitted with a steel blade, plus a tablespoon of sugar and a half a teaspoon of kosher salt. Pulse it a few times to combine. Then add 12 tablespoons of cold, unsalted butter in small dice. And pulse the machine 10 to 12 times until the butter is the size of peas. With the food processor on, pour a half a cup of ice water down the feed tube. Then pulse the machine just until the dough comes together. Turn it out onto a floured board, knead it quickly into a 5-inch round flat disc, wrap it in plastic, and refrigerate it for exactly 1 hour. Okay, now rolling it out. I know everybody's scared of that, but it's not so complicated. So one of the things is I'm making a rectangle, and I keep the board really well floured and keep rolling it from the center out. I find rolling the pastry diagonally helps to keep the rectangular shape. And try and handle the dough as little as possible. I'm gonna cut it on the sheet pan. Okay. I'm just gonna straighten the edges. So it just doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be rectangular. I'm gonna refrigerate this while I get the figs ready. So this is how I prep the figs for this tart. I've got really big figs, which are just gorgeous. Take off the stem and just cut it in half. And they're big, so I'm gonna cut them in quarters. And now I'm gonna line the figs up in perfect rows. Okay, here goes. Half a cup of sugar. Don't skimp. Just evenly sprinkled all over the top. Okay, into the oven, 400 degrees. I'm gonna rotate it once, just to make sure the pastry browns perfectly evenly. The tart's almost ready to come out of the oven, and I'm just gonna make a glaze, give it a really professional finish. So I've got about half a cup of apricot preserves, a few tablespoons of water, and just stir that around just until the preserves melt. Okay, that's it for the glaze, and I can smell the tart, so I think it's ready. How gorgeous does that look? Wow. I just need the glaze and a brush. This is really easy. Just brush the top of the fruit really carefully, a little bit of the apricot glaze. So just dab it on. You don't want to brush it because you'll move the fruit around. So let's see if I can do this in one go. And do you think anybody will miss a little piece if I take it off? Nah, not a chance. That's really good.
I'm gonna make some raspberry pretzel cups. All right, so I have some raspberries that I've roughly chopped. I added it to a bowl with 1 tablespoon of sugar. Now that's called macerating. It's drawing out the juice, kind of making a syrup and softening the raspberry. I'm gonna let my raspberries sit. Now I'm gonna make my pretzel crust. I'm gonna add 2 cups of pretzels to my food processor and a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. All right, so I have about 4 tablespoons of melted salted butter. All of these ingredients are gonna make my crust. Give it a zap. And I want the texture of crumbs. I don't really want big pieces of pretzel in there. One more time. That should do it. Okay. I am pouring my pretzel crust into a bowl here. Make sure I get all the good buttery bits at the bottom. All right, next, the cream cheese filling. In this mixer, I'm gonna add 1.5 blocks of full-fat cream cheese. I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of powdered sugar. I'm gonna add the zest and the juice of 1 lemon. I'm gonna add a little vanilla and some heavy cream. I'm just gonna mix this all together, and this will be the filling for my raspberry pretzel cups. All right, so I'm gonna scrape down my sides. So the way it's looking now, I want it to be a little bit more fluffier. And when you're making fillings like this, if you add powdered sugar, that will help with the consistency of it. So I already put a 1/3 cup in there. I think I'm gonna add another 1/3 cup. And it could stand to be a little sweeter. Let's see. Done. Now it's time to build the cups. I'm filling the bottom of the glass with my pretzel crust. I'm gonna add my cream cheese filling. Okay. Now I'm gonna add my raspberries. The raspberries have softened, some of the juice has come out of it. It's kind of created some of that, like a syrup with the sugar. This looks incredible. Now I've got some sweetened whipped cream I'm gonna top it off with. And then I get cute with it. Add a little raspberry on top and a pretzel. I'm gonna make the rest, but since this is already made, I might as well try it, right? And gotta get to the bottom where the crust is. This is my type of carrying on.
My blueberry pie. Very
Butter
easy.
firms up again.
Flour, unsifted. Sugar, salt, a quick little mix. Stop.
look, it's so easy.
So then we're gonna go to the fridge or freezer. The butter has to be really cold and chopped into cubes. We're gonna pulse this until it comes to be little pebbles. And then we're gonna add some milk, 1 yolk. That's it. You're gonna gather that, put it in a roll like that, put there in a plastic wrap in the fridge. Fantastic. Look how beautiful that is. See that?
And it feels so good. This dough really has a nice touch to it.
All right, the main event. You really got to get really good blueberries. Wait till the summer comes to buy them. Flour,
But we've got some really fun varietals.
cornstarch.
Blueberries.
Got to have cornstarch.
Yep.
Salt, cinnamon,
Okay.
and then sugar.
That's
now,
right.
this is the part 1. You just want to toss this gently. And the point of this is to really to douse the blueberries in the cornstarch. The cornstarch really is the key to this. Then we're going to add to this some honey,
Interesting.
some vanilla, as much vanilla as humanly possible, some lemon juice, lemon zest. All right. Are you almost ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, we're just going to put this all
Perfect
together.
timing.
Now, normally, you'll see a pool of juice in the bottom. There's no pool here, and that's because we put that honey in. All right. Now, really, really well mixed. A beautiful, gorgeous
Yeah, that looks
pie.
fantastic.
And the other rule about making pie is don't
it
drop
smells
anything.
so good.
But you have to overfill it to some
Yep.
extent.
I put it on top?
Yeah. You know how to crimp, you want to crimp, right?
mine off.
And you don't have to get crazy. And then we're just going to cut around the edge. And then, Katie, would you put a couple of sort of little vent holes on top of here? Just a few slits. So you preheat your oven. And I mean seriously preheat your oven, okay?
Should I put it in?
Little egg wash. This is with water. You can put just straight. And then sugar. You need to have a sweet crust. There's a whole school of thought. And the crust is really incredible. 425, 15 minutes, center of the oven. Then you reduce it to 375, 60 to 70 minutes. It's a long bake. Take it out, let it rest, at least 2 or 3 hours, or maybe more. You want it to be almost just barely warm or room temperature is the way you want to eat it.
I mean, this is a beauty.
Wow, lovely.
Who needs to go to the pie shop?
Thank you,
Why would
Mom.
do that?
That is
Thank you,
summer.
Martha.
Oh.
Should we taste? Are we ready?
I went to her house.
Look at
Oh,
that.
man, dude, tight.
Wow, baby.
Yes.
High and tight.
High and tight.
It's like a haircut.
Just
I'm trying
made
to
a
stay
pie
away
that's
from the
like
pie.
a 12 out of 10, honestly.
Peaches with a touch of butter and mascarpone whipped cream.
So these peaches are very ripe. What's nice about a ripe peach is that you can almost do the avocado twist on it.
It just makes them easier to work with. It doesn't make them better or worse, just
Right.
sometimes easier.
To this, I'm just gonna drizzle a little honey. You want probably about 2 tablespoons, but I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. I'm just gonna sort of drizzle it over. Now these peaches are very sweet, so I'm not adding a ton, but what the honey's gonna do is it's gonna mix with a little bit of butter, and it's gonna make a little snazzy
Wow, are these peaches
butter
good?
and honey sauce. So probably, I don't wanna go, well, there's that.
Happened to me too, don't worry.
So let's just scooch that over there. Probably about 2 tablespoons of butter. So I'm just gonna zest 1 lemon in here. And I'm gonna do the juice, because I like lemon, as we all know. Okay, so now we're just gonna couch this up.
Now, if you didn't have the bundle, I've seen you do this on a sheet tray, right, in the oven.
Yeah.
Just without the bundle. So you could put it on a cookie sheet, right?
You could, or even in a, a scale, like a cast enamel.
And then I'm gonna put the peaches in that same little
Right in the
pit.
coals.
We'll close the lid now because the coals are starting to come down a little bit temperature-wise. So we're gonna do a little citrus mascarpone to serve underneath the warm peaches. Creamy mascarpone. So I have 4 ounces of heavy cream, 1 cup of mascarpone, a couple tablespoons of honey, and then the zest of a whole orange, the juice of half an orange, and then I'm just gonna whip this together.
That's gonna be amazing.
I wanna show you these peaches. This is hot, so you could use tongs to open this.
Sure. Yeah, be careful, because that steam is really...
But look at, see, it's starting to caramelize on the bottom, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Those peaches are cooked through. They have
Just
some liquid. They're
super
tender.
tender.
All right, Lizzie, I'm gonna continue whipping this cream, and we have a little crumble almond thing that we're gonna garnish this with.
Shortbread almond crumble. This couldn't be an easier, quick topping. These are just roasted salted almonds. And this is just some shortbread cookies, which we're also going to mash up. So I'm not gonna mash all of these. Let's do 3 stacks. Okay.
I'm excited.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, I think we're good. Okay, and these are, we're gonna be a little more delicate with, because I almost hate to do this to those poor little cookies. All right, look at that. You can see those little flecks of orange in there. That mascarpone orangey cream is going to melt down on those hot peaches. These salted almonds are gonna be terrific. And then we're gonna do a little shortbread, putting extra shortbread on mine. Okay, and the last thing we need to do.
I thought you were making the special one for me. Silly me.
Oh my gosh. This is seriously amazing.
The sweetness really comes out of the peach because it's caramelized. All right.
So I am just juicing a grapefruit. This is a really juicy one, so I probably don't need to squeeze the heck out of it. And I just strained out the pulp and the seeds. And then I also have the zest from the same grapefruit. And I'm gonna add a couple of egg yolks and a can of sweetened condensed milk, which is the nectar of the gods. And then I wanna color the filling pink, just to kind of drive home that grapefruit note. So I'm gonna add probably 5 drops of red food coloring. I always close it when I'm finished because I cannot be trusted. And then I'm gonna whisk it. I know, but it's gonna turn more pink as I stir. So for the crust, I actually already pre-baked it. I just used graham crackers and butter and sugar, pressed it into a tart pan, and baked it just till it was barely golden. All right, so I've got the crust, and I'm gonna pour the filling right in. It'll actually deepen in color just a little bit as it bakes. All right, let's get this tart in the oven, Alex Marie. It bakes at 350 degrees for about 15 minutes until the filling is set. And then I'll take it out, let it cool, and chill it before I serve. Never have I chosen a more perfect shirt color than the one I chose today. Look.
Was that a coincidence?
It actually was. I wasn't even thinking ahead. So the tart is baked and it's cooled and chilled and straight out of the fridge. And I'm just gonna go ahead and take the liberty of cutting a beautiful piece of grapefruit tart. How gorgeous is this?
Wow.
And we helped the color along a little bit, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And then I have some freshly whipped cream.
Can I ask you something?
Yes, you can.
What's the difference between pie and tart?
It's a really good question. I think it's usually like the thickness of the crust and, you know, the height. I always think of a tart as being sort of short, like low to the ground. I mean, low to the plate.
Okay.
Okay, grapefruit tart. Look how beautiful. This is perfect when you're having company over, or it's perfect on a Tuesday, about 145. Oh. Let's just call it perfect.
Got it.
I'm making a peach blueberry crumble that's a perfect summer dessert with juicy peaches and a crisp crust. I'm going to take a quarter of a pound of unsalted butter. It has to be really cold.
Okay.
And I'm going to dice it up. 1 cup of flour,
Got it.
a third of a cup of sugar,
Okay.
a quarter of a cup of brown sugar. Put it in. A quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And the last thing is cinnamon. About a quarter of a teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, just mix that up. And just add the butter. And so I'm going to mix it until the butter is like the size of peas. That should be about right. So then, when it's still like this, then you just press it between your fingers, and it really mixes it together.
Okay.
It's good and messy.
Good and messy.
Perfect. So you just want it so it's big crumbles like that, and then it's going to bake really nicely. I started by poaching 2 pounds of fresh, ripe peaches in boiling water just for about a minute. This is a really fast way to get the skins off. Then I fished them out and put them in ice cold water just to stop the cooking. Then peeling them is really easy. The skins just slip off. Then I slice them in thick wedges, about 8 wedges per peach, depending on how big they are. Sprinkled over 2 teaspoons of fresh lemon zest, 2 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice, some granulated sugar, about a half a cup, depending on how sweet the peaches are, and a quarter of a cup of all-purpose flour. This makes a little bit of a sauce when they cook. Then gently mix in all the fresh blueberries, the peaches, and put them in all of the ramekins. Okay, just enough on each one. These are going to go into the oven, 350 degrees, for about 40 to 45 minutes, until they're nice and brown and crumbly.
Wow.
Peach and blueberry crumble. That looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Looks delicious.
Okay, you need a little vanilla ice cream on it.
Could only make it better.
I love the way the blueberries drips out the side. Okay, gentlemen, start your spoons.
Thank you.
So this looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Wow. That's delicious.
I love it. It's crumbly and sweet, and its texture's good.
It's awesome.
Room temperature butter, about a third a cup of sugar. I want to put those egg yolks in. Actually, I can put the speed up a little bit higher now. There we go. Okay, so in goes the 1 yolk. There's 2 yolks. Just a little touch of some vanilla. There we go. And this right here, this lemon curd that we're gonna make and the fresh berries, I think you'll dig it. There's the flour. Okay. Every time. In amazement, I am gonna grab the half cup and actually do it exactly 2.5. And there we go. Now, see how it's starting to bind up there a little bit? You can really hear that mixture starting to work. I'm gonna take this out, wrap it in some plastic, pop it in the fridge for about an hour, bring it out before I'm ready to work with it. So let's zest in some of the Meyer lemon. You should smell it right now. It smells like perfume. So we get that in. Go ahead and cut these, and they're soft and super ripe. And I'm gonna get this the lemon juice in there. I'm looking for about 3/4 of a cup. Not exact science in this part as much as when I do the dough. Okay. Could have done these ahead of time. Okay. Compost that. Also, 3/4 of a cup of sugar is gonna go into this. And again, this is all going for these super tarts. Get a 1.5 sticks of the butter in. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Oh, eggs. Last piece here. There we go. 1 egg, 2, and 3. Now, going over the double boiler, this is the tricky part, is don't want to get it too hot and too fast. I'm not looking to make an omelet, and that's the reason I'm doing it in a double boiler, is because if you try to do it right in a pan, no matter how much you really control the temperature, it could just get away from you. So I'm going to take this and just nicely, under nice heat, and this is just a slight simmer on that water. Let that butter melt into that. Now the dough is really nice and soft, and actually if it gets too soft, it really starts to, gets too warm, it'll start to break apart on you, but it's not too cold to where it's really hard to work. And I want to get this right about here. That's right about what I'm looking for, okay? About 1/8 of an inch. Pop that down, give myself a little cutout like that. My little tart shell here, throw it on. Press it down in first to the sides, run it around the sides. There we go. Crimp off the top of it. I bust these out. Little fork holes here so it doesn't puff up on me. Rocking out some Meyer lemon tarts, topping them off with a little garnish of some fresh California produce. What do you think of that? Baked it right up here with those Meyer lemons. You should smell that. And nice and a little dollop of some cream.
I'm making a rustic strawberry tart. And aside from it being very quick and easy, it happens to be a total knockout. I'm starting by having some strawberries. I hold them, just took the tops off, and I'm throwing them into a bowl, and I am going to make a delicious strawberry filling for the tart. I'll start with 1/2 cup of sugar. You gotta have sugary strawberries, I don't care what the dessert is. And I'll add a couple of tablespoons of flour, and that keeps the sugary strawberries from getting too liquidy in the oven. The flour kind of thickens them up a little bit. Now, whenever I make any sort of filling for a pie or a tart, I definitely like to add lemon zest and lemon juice, whether it's apple filling, blueberry filling, or strawberry. So I'm just zesting about 1/2 of this lemon, and then I'll squeeze in just a little bit of the lemon juice, about a teaspoon. Ooh, that's a juicy lemon. And then just a splash of vanilla, probably about a teaspoon or so. And I'll stir this around. Okay, the strawberries are totally coated in the sugar and flour mixture. So I'm gonna let those sit, and I'm gonna get to work on the crust for the tart. I'm gonna flour the board, and here is part of what makes this a quick and easy tart. I'm using store-bought pie crust. So what I did was overlap one crust over the other, about halfway through the middle. And I'm gonna roll this out just a bit to make it a little bit bigger, and also to make sure these two crusts become one. I want them to really stick together. Okay, that looks great. Now just for the shape, I'm gonna cut this a little bit so it'll be sure to fit the sheet pan that I'm baking the tart on. So to transfer this over to the sheet pan, get my rolling pin again. Okay, now I'm gonna spoon the strawberries onto the crust, leaving a border around the edge, and then I'll fold up the edges and brush them with an egg wash. Now I'm gonna put it into a 400-degree oven and bake it for 30 minutes, rotating the pan halfway through. The tart is ready. I know this because it smells amazing. Ooh, my gosh, it's so pretty. The crust is so golden. It has a little sheen from the egg wash. Now the strawberries look beautiful, but I'm about to make them a little bit prettier by glossing them up a little bit. And I like to use apricot preserves for that. I actually put some apricot preserves in a saucepan and warmed it up with just a splash of water, and it creates this beautiful glossy surface on these strawberries. Oh, it looks great. Now I whipped some cream, just a cup of heavy cream with a teaspoon of sugar, And I've got a pretty platter to put it on once it cools. It is gorgeous and glossy, so elegant, but so rustic.
I'm cooking blackberry ham pies. They're cute, they're simple, and they're very easy to transport. So I'm cooking down about 2 cups of blackberries. Blackberry jam is my jam. So I'm adding in 2/3 cup of sugar, and I'm gonna mix the sugar with the blackberry. Just gonna let it cook down. But what I will do is speed up the process and start smashing. I'm using a potato smasher just to smash up the blackberries. So pretty. And I'm gonna just let this reduce until it gets to the consistency I like, almost like a jam. All right, I'm gonna speed up the process a little more. Why not? Because we can. I'm gonna make a slurry. Slurry is simply some type of liquid in cornstarch or flour. I'm gonna use cornstarch. And wait, before I do that, got these pretty lemons over there. I'm gonna use a little bit of zest. And I'm not gonna discard the lemon because I'm gonna actually use it in my slurry. And I'm using 1 tablespoon of cornstarch as a thickening agent. I've added in the slurry, and now it's gotten nice and thick. Let me show you. See how thick that is? So I've got 2 store-bought pie crusts. They come 2 in the pack. I've let them sit out for a little bit because if you don't, they'll be really hard and you can't move around, they won't be flexible. And I'm just gonna cut rounds. You can freehand it, but I like to use a bowl as my guide, and I would say this is about 5 inches, okay? It's gonna make about 3 circles for each pie crust, and you'll have some left over. Don't throw that away because you can use it for more dough. Just using a small knife here, I'm gonna go around the circles, letting the knife do the job. Lift up your bowl, and look what you got. So that's 1. I'm gonna get 2 more out of that. I got 6 discs here, and I told you, I'm not gonna throw this away. I'm gonna reflour my surface. I'm gonna get a rolling pin. My pin is nice and floured. I'm hoping to get 2 more discs out of this. I'm gonna transfer it to a sheet pan. I've lined my sheet pans with parchment paper so my pies won't stick. My blackberry jam has been cooling. I'm gonna put it down here. And I'm using an egg wash because it's gonna help seal the pie so that blackberry jam doesn't seep out. And it also is gonna help the crust flake up. And because I'm using raw sugar on top, it's gonna help keep that sugar on top of the pies. 1 tablespoon of the blackberry jam. Blackberry cheesecake filling inside of a pie crust. Whew. And I'm using the egg wash only on the edges to help seal it up. I'm just gonna fold over the side that I did not put the compote and cheese. Close it up just like that. I'm gonna make it really cute and add little crimps. And that's how you seal a hand pie. I'm gonna put a little egg wash on top. And now I'm gonna vent the pie, 3 little slits in the center. And that's so the air can circulate through the pie so it won't puff up. So the dough and the filling are always baking together. Last thing is my raw sugar. Adds a little crunch to it, gives it a little bit more sweetness. These are done. I got the oven preheated to 375. I'm gonna let them bake for 20 to 25 minutes. They look so beautiful before they're baked. I can't wait to see how they look when they're done. Right, it's been about 25 minutes and those pies are beautiful. Nice and brown. That sugar is nice and shiny.
For dessert, I am making my peach shortcakes, which are layers of buttery, subtly sweet biscuit piled high with syrupy peaches and dollops of cream cheese whip. Before I get going on my cakes, I'm going to macerate my peaches, which is just a fancy term. That means I'm gonna toss them in some sugar. I've got my sliced peaches here, and I'll toss them with 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'll set these aside while I get going on my shortcake dough. I'll start with 4 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of baking powder to help the cakes rise and get fluffy, and then 1½ teaspoons of kosher salt. I'll give this a quick whisk, and then grab 1 cup of cold cubed butter. You make these almost like you would a pie dough or a biscuit dough. You want that butter to be cold so that you get those flaky pockets of deliciousness. I'll get in here with my hands to incorporate the butter, just smashing it with some of the dry ingredients. And I'm going for bits that are about the size of peas. Now I'll bring this all together into a dough using 1.5 cups of heavy cream and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I like a lot of vanilla in my shortcakes. I'll drizzle this in, and then I want to work fairly quickly to bring this dough together because I want the butter to stay cold, I want the dough to stay cold. And I'm just gently mixing this just enough so that the dough sticks together. Once it forms a shaggy dough like this, I can use my hands to bring it all together. Get this out onto my counter. All right. And now I'll roll it out until it's a scant 1/2 inch thick. All right, I've got my baking sheet and my circle cutter here. And to shape these, I'll cut out 1 circle. This is 3 inches in diameter. I'll place it on my baking sheet and then brush it with butter. And this is a way of getting more buttery flavor into the cake. And then it'll also help the layers split apart after they've baked. I'll stack another circle on top of it, so you're essentially baking 2 right on top of each other. It's a 2-layer cake. I'll brush with another layer of butter. This is going to help a very important component of shortcakes stick on, which is the sugar crackly crunchy topping. And this looks really pretty and allows you to get some sweetness right on your tongue as soon as you take a bite. So don't forget this step. All right, I'll keep on stacking these out and then I'll bake at 400 degrees until they're golden. I'll start checking them at 25 minutes. Smells buttery good in here. Let me check on my shortcakes. Oh yeah, they're golden and the definition of rustic beauty. I love the crackles on top. I'll let these cool while I make my whipped cream filling. I'm starting with 1/2 block of cream cheese. This is softened to room temperature, and to this I'll add 1 cup of cold heavy whipping cream. 1/4 cup of powdered sugar is all you need, and a splash of vanilla for flavor. And I'll beat this up until it's just shy of stiff peaks. I like a medium stiff peak, pillows and clouds over these cakes. All right, I'm getting so excited to assemble. So I'll gently split apart the layers. That brushing of butter made that easy. And then I'll do whipped cream, peaches, whipped cream sandwich. More cream. Here I go. This is gonna be sloppy.
My friends Eli Zabar, David Ziff, and I are making dinner together. We've each got our assignments. Of course, I assigned dessert to myself, so I'm making a plum tart. I love plums. These are these Italian prune plums, and they're in season at the end of the summer, and they're so delicious. If you want to make these with regular plums, just make sure they're not too juicy. They should be pretty firm, but you can certainly do it. So I'm starting with 3/4 pound of prune plums, 2 tablespoons of tapioca. It's a root, and it's used to thicken things classically in pies, and it'll sort of absorb the juices. 2 tablespoons of creme de cassis, which is black currant liqueur, which you don't really taste in the tart, but it really brings out that sort of plummy flavor. And next is 3/4 cup of sugar. So I'm just going to stir this up. This is going to sit for about 15 minutes and just sort of macerate. The juices are going to come out. And in the meantime, I'm going to make a shortbread dough, which is going to become both the crust and the crumble topping. I'll show you how to make it. Start with 1/4 pound of unsalted butter. Has to be room temperature. Put it in the bowl of a mixer fitted with a paddle attachment. Add a cup of sugar, and then cream them together until they're light and fluffy. Meanwhile, put 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour in another bowl. Add 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and just mix them together. Then with the mixer on low, gradually add the dry ingredients to the butter mixture until it forms small dry crumbs. Then add a tablespoon of cold water, and in about 30 seconds, the mixture will form large moist crumbs, and it'll be done. So the next thing to do is put in a springform pan. I've got a 9-inch springform pan. And I'm just going to put the dough right in. I'm going to put almost all of it, say like 3/4 of a cup, and I'll show you. I'm going to put it on the top, like a little crumble. So just pat it right. I love shortbread dough for this because you can just pat it in, you don't have to roll it out. And if it's too sticky, a little bit of flour on your fingers, just be really easy to do. You can really make this tart with peaches or pears, but when the plums are in season, I just think they're great. Okay, next the plums. So I'm going to take all the plums that I've cut and just put them in, but I want it to be really pretty. So just do them really tightly. Just keep going around in circles. Okay, well, this looks like a little like a lotus flower. Okay, last couple, just squeeze in here. It just makes it. And then I'm going to take the juice and just pour it over the top. Just drizzle it on. And then finally, that little bit of the 3/4 of a cup of crumb topping that I held aside, I'm just going to crumble right on top. I love this tart because you end up with a crisp base and the juicy fruit is fantastic. It all bakes together. It's so good. So the plum tart's been cooling for about 15 minutes. And I'm just going to get it out of this pan. Not easy to do. And it's all ready to go. And believe me, it tastes as good as it looks.
Cherry pie. Jeff, I'm gonna have you help me out.
Your favorite.
You're gonna get started on the filling.
Okay.
So you can use either sweet or tart cherries, depending on the season, what you can find, frozen, canned. If you're using sweet like we are, it's a cup of sugar.
Okay.
If you're using the sour cherries, it's a cup and a half of sugar.
sugar.
And then I've got flour, that's the thickener. So you just dump it all in the pan.
All in here?
And you
Oh,
wanna
yeah.
let it simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes till it gets nice and thick. Now I'm gonna show you a revolutionary pie crust, okay?
Okay.
Now in
Okay.
creative
Can't
baking,
wait.
we did it the old way with shortening. I am doing an oil crust.
What?
Yes, I love an oil crust.
Yeah, my grandma used to do this, and they're so easy, okay? So here we go. I've got my flour.
Face, Jeezy. This is what
Yeah.
happens in the South.
Are we making pizza, Katie?
We did
Flour
know.
and
It's gonna be
salt.
so delicious.
Mix the flour and salt, and then you're gonna add in vegetable oil. You're looking for a neutral oil that's not gonna impart flavor here. And then you're gonna add just a couple tablespoons of cold water. And you're looking for this to just come together.
I am so intrigued by this.
Very intrigued.
We're not looking for like a really wet dough. You want it to be just coming together, and take care not to over-mix your dough. Now, I've got 2 pieces of parchment paper
That's
here.
right, Katie.
Or wax
You don't
paper.
rest it, Katie?
No,
Wow.
that's it.
Let me
It's
tell you
so
something
simple.
about old school recipes. They break all of the rules, but they still work out. My grandma would put eggs into hot batter in a blender and blitz it up and make a pie, and it's not eggy. The egg didn't break or anything like that. It's just something about these old school recipes.
So I have all of the dough here. I'm gonna divide this in half, but make one half slightly bigger than the other because the bottom
top.
half needs to be bigger.
So the overlap.
I'm gonna set that one aside. We're gonna do this little step twice and kind of make it into a round disc, and then put our parchment paper on top. And then the way that I like to roll it out, I just start going and then keep turning it in a
The old
circle.
Turn and burn. Love
Yeah.
that.
So you just keep rolling in that circle, just like that, until you get it big enough for your pie plate. Now I've got one here already done. Jeff, if you'll take some of this lightly beaten egg and just give it a good brush,
On the
that's
bottom.
gonna help seal the crust so that you don't get that soggy crust. You know how sometimes
That's a
you
nice trick.
slice into a pie and it's got a soggy bottom?
I still blind bake. I love that.
This'll help. All right, so I'm
great
gonna
idea.
just
Give a
keep
little
rolling
salad
this. See how quickly that happened? And if you're not gonna make your pie for a little bit, you can just put this in the
It's
fridge.
a great tip, though, for whenever
Yeah,
you're making a pie, rather than
sandwiching.
trying to get it stuck to the, the dowel or the roller rolling pin.
Yeah.
This is
Less
like so
bench
much easier.
flour used.
Yeah.
All right, so we got this all nice and thickened up, and you can use this same recipe for any kind of fruit pie that you want. We need a little bit more
Oh, yeah,
filling.
you go. And that's cooled, right? The stuff you put it, you want it,
Yeah, cool
cooled.
it a little bit.
cool it a little bit.
What I like about this pie method is you don't have to rest it. Bring it out, and you don't have to bench for,
Right.
like you said, you don't change the recipe. Put too much flour, it changes the structure of the
A
dough.
lot faster. And then I like to put just a couple cubes of butter over it to give it some
There's the
flavor.
butter.
So here's my other crust.
Wow.
I'm gonna take it
Shiny and beautiful.
and just go
Ooh, that would be
right
a
on
good
top.
empanada dough.
Yeah, you're right. You could use this for savory, for sure. And then we're just gonna peel it off very carefully. Now, this dough is a little crumbly, so you wanna take your time when you do the peel. And I am not gonna lie, I buy pie crust all the time.
All the time.
There's plenty of really good ones that you can buy. So
What about you, Jeezy?
no shame in that game.
Do you buy pie crust, Jeezy?
I don't, but I buy a lot of frozen puff pastry.
Okay, yeah,
Which I
same.
use
I'm not
Oh,
making
yeah.
tough paste.
Okay, so here's our pie crust. It looks really nice. And I'm just gonna take the egg wash, and this is gonna give us a nice, beautiful golden
Bumps
brown
from the
crust.
cherries.
Yeah,
You could
yeah.
see that on there.
I
That's
love
exciting.
that schooled.
And you know, you could use the same recipe with the sugar and the flour for a blueberry pie. You could do it for a peach pie, strawberry rhubarb.
A raspberry pie?
Absolutely. All right, so now I'm gonna cut a vent into the top of the pie. And I always do the egg wash first, because if you cut the vent first and then the egg wash, you're gonna seal your vent.
Get drippage.
All right, so you can take your knife around and trim the sides.
Are you implementing skills you learned in school in the creative baking class as we speak? Okay.
You know, it's funny to think back the classes that you actually use. That was an elective, and it became what
still use my
I
mechanics
actually
class.
use. And crimp the edges, kind of give them a little curb appeal, or you can take a fork.
That's it. Do the time
Just
method.
go around like that. So it's
Makes
your
less
choice.
time.
The one I baked earlier, I did the crimping method. This one, I'm gonna do the fork method. So we'll have two different ones. Everybody at home, we get messages, what do you all do with the food?
Eat
that you don't
it.
eat? There's a lot of people behind this camera
they want it.
Yeah.
that's gonna be having cherry pie for lunch today. This
It's a
goes
proper lunch.
into the oven, 425 degrees for 45 to 55 minutes.
Right.
If at any point you see that the crust starts to look too done, take it out and put a little foil around the edge. And
Yeah.
I've got one right here
Ooh, girl.
that is beautiful
Oh,
and done.
that looks
Jeff, why don't you get some vanilla ice
fantastic.
cream out of the freezer?
Oh, pick it up.
Katie, that looks
There we go.
just divine.
That's
And
right.
It's so pretty, it looks store-bought.
Talk about the crust, Jeezy.
I mean, I've been schooled today. I've never seen this.
No.
And I'm so excited to use it because it's so easy.
Super
So
simple.
easy. And you could use that crust for a chicken pot pie.
Yeah, that's what,
Right?
Yeah.
it looks flaky already.
It's a very flaky crust. And let it cool a little bit before you cut it so that it's easier to slice so it gets nice and set up.
Flakiness on 10. Welcome to Flake Town.
Oh, look at
Look at that. Look at that, Katie.
Look at that. All right.
it's solid.
Jeff, you helped. So
Yeah, it did. I'm gonna.
Yeah, you were really a good help there.
He was.
Hey, I put the stuff in the thing. All right, let's try that.
What?
That's beautiful structure.
I
right? Just
mean,
structure.
it's holding up, man.
Just from a visual standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Holding up, it's not spilling out.
No, Jeezy,
You know the filling's
I would
on
like for
point.
you to try that crust first, Jeezy. Yeah, forget me. I believe in it.
First of all, right, we've spent 6 minutes talking about the crust. The crust is a must, dare I say. It is so
Okay.
good. It's so much easier
Okay.
than the butter crust.
Okay.
And that filling, perfectly tart, balanced with the amount of sugar we in there. Just make sure you taste those cherries before because it's perfect. It's right in the perfect sweetness to tart ratio zone.
Now, I got some frozen peaches that have, kind of thawed out a little bit. I'm getting these into the mix here. And what I'm gonna do is hit them with a little brown sugar and some regular white sugar. So look at those. Let's get a little bit of regular sugar in, about a quarter cup. And we'll get a little brown sugar in. So you get some of that nice kind of rich, deep molasses flavor. There we go. And a little bit of flour to kind of bind it together a bit. We're also going to be hitting some cornstarch in there. The flour kind of gets a little thick and a little opaque where the cornstarch kind of runs a little bit more clear. So get a little flour. And get a little lemon juice. And get some water in there too. So a little lemon juice goes down. Get a little water in here. Spoon, and where's my cornstarch? Okay, there we go. Kind of mix that up a little bit. Make not quite a slurry, because that's not a ton of cornstarch. All right, now before I mix that in, I'm gonna get a little cinnamon down. There we go. Okay, so take this, kind of pour it around. Now this is gonna be the base of it. We got sugar, we got flour. This all right here could be made, we could be making peach pie for all I know. So he's gonna get poured in here. First things first, let's get in a little bit of oats. Maybe 3/4 cup. We'll get in some flour. There we go. Okay. We'll get in some brown sugar. Again, kind of the same, you know, some of the same sweeteners that we had on the mix with the peaches. A little bit of both. And a little bit of white sugar. Same thing, about 1/4 cup on that. I was dragging a bit there. Okay, gonna give a little pinch of salt into this piece. There we go, a little bit of cinnamon hiding there. You see when I bake at home, I mean, I get everything out that I own. Okay, a little bit of cinnamon going downtown. Here we are. And then here's the kicker, a little fresh nutmeg. Get that. Got a zester, a little microplane here. And this, especially the fresh nutmeg, really makes it work. About 1/4 teaspoon on that. There we are. All right. Now we get in some almonds. Toasting these would also be a nice little move to make. There we go. And we're gonna hit it with some cranberries. You know what, I'm kind of looking at this. I'm looking at the size of the dish. I'm gonna up my oats just a little bit. Just give a little bit more, and I'm just gonna hit a touch more flour in there too. Because depending on the size pan, when you're using a smaller dish, you don't have as much surface area to cover. I'm just gonna hit a little bit more in there. Now, here comes the key. I gotta de-bling for this. This is the key. Having a little room temperature butter that's been softened, and we're gonna kind of mix this in here. I'll just kind of break it up a little bit. Now we're gonna work this into here. Now, what's gonna do? Well, it's gonna work as a little bit of a binder, but it's also gonna kind of melt and help crisp things up. All right, here we go. Go down with some of this. All right. Okay, here we go, into the oven. It's at 450. I'm just gonna pop it in there right now at the 450. It's smoking hot, but what I'm gonna do is drop it down to 350. It'll still have some of that residual temperature. Now check this out. The peaches are cooked, kind of make a nice caramel sauce around it, and I got some crunchy topping, but the topping that's down into the peaches is a little bit soggy. So now that I want the crunch, I want extra crunch, I'm gonna take the rest of the crunchy topping and put it on top. This will sit on the existing crunchy topping, and I'll have lots of extra crunchy topping. Okay, that goes back in, a few more minutes, crunch that top up. Peaches tossed with cinnamon and sugar, then baked under a comfy blanket of oats, slivered almonds, dried cranberries, a little brown sugar. Oh, ain't she a peach?
Summer pudding is basically layers of bread and usually berries, but I kind of want to ramp up the flavor. So I'm going to use French brioche loaf and a mixture of cooked berries and peaches. They'll be really great together. So this is the brioche. It's an egg bread. It's kind of rich. It could be challah. It's the same kind of thing. And I've cut it in 1/2-inch thick slices after I cut the crust off. And this is the peaches and berries all cooked together. It's just gorgeous. I'll show you how I made it. I put a pint of hulled and sliced strawberries into a pan with 1½ cups of sugar, 1/4 cup of water, and cooked them over medium-low heat. After 5 minutes, I added 2 half pints of fresh raspberries, 2 half pints of fresh blueberries, a pound of peeled peaches cut in 1/2-inch dice. I brought everything to a simmer, then I cooked it for another minute, turned off the heat, stirred in another 1/2 pint of raspberries. I added them now to keep them whole. And finally, 2 tablespoons of framboise, which is raspberry liqueur. So, big spoon of fruit and the juices too. It's really important because that gets into the bread. In the bottom, and then a layer of bread. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the bread so that it fits perfectly in one layer. You can even tear it. It doesn't even have to be cut, because you want it to end up being like a little cake. You can do this in any kind of a dish. Just remember that the bottom, when you turn it out, becomes the top. So choose something that'll look nice that way. This is gonna be fantastic. I'm just gonna keep going. So I'm just layering fruit and bread all the way to the top of the dish. And a final layer of fruit and syrup using every last drop. With the pudding assembled, I'll cover it loosely with plastic wrap. Put a plate on top, approximately the same diameter as the inside of the dish. Weigh it down with a heavy can to compress the layers, and put it in the fridge to chill overnight. I just want to show you the inside of this. It's incredible. Just cut it like a cake. Wow, love this. It's a great summer dessert. Isn't that fantastic? Raspberry baked Alaskas, where the result is a total wow. I'm making these incredible raspberry baked Alaskas, starts with pound cake on the bottom and ice cream and sorbet in the middle, and then it's covered with meringue, and they're real showstoppers. What I have is 6 slices of pound cake. They're about 1/2 inch thick. I mean, you can make your own pound cake, but why would you? And I'm gonna take a 2.5 inch cutter, and I'm gonna cut a round out of each slice of pound cake. Just discard the edges. Okay, next is the ice cream. So I want a round scoop that's half raspberry sorbet and half vanilla ice cream. So I do half a scoop with vanilla, and then I just fill the rest of it with raspberry sorbet. I mean, how easy is that? I love raspberries and cream, so this is a good combination. See, the scoop and the cake are just the same diameter, so it makes it look really nice. Okay, that's one. Doesn't that look great? I'm gonna do 5 more and put them on a sheet pan. Okay, that's all 6. Doesn't that look great? So I'm just gonna freeze them for 30 minutes, just until they get nice and hard. And in the meantime, I'm gonna make Swiss meringue to put on the outside. It's so dramatic. There are 2 steps to the Swiss meringue. First, I'll heat 8 extra large egg whites in a heat-proof bowl set over a pan of simmering water. Add 1.5 cups of sugar and whisk the mixture almost constantly until the sugar is dissolved and it reads 120 degrees on a candy thermometer. Then for step 2, I'll pour the mixture into the bowl of an electric mixer fitted with a whisk attachment. Add 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and beat it on medium speed for 1 minute. Then I'll turn up the speed and whisk it on high for 5 minutes until the egg whites form stiff, glossy peaks. So you take meringue and you put it on the outside. And this is my technique. I just take a little offset spatula, just like this, and just cover the entire thing with meringue. Just keep adding meringue. Make sure it's completely covered. Because remember, I'm gonna bake this. Okay, so you want big peaks, just like that, because that's what's gonna kind of brown when you put them in the oven. So now I'm gonna bake these, really hot temperature, 500 degrees, for 2.5 to 3 minutes. You wanna watch them really carefully. And in the meantime, I'm gonna get the sauce for the baked Alaskas. So this is my fresh raspberry sauce. And the best part is, one of the key ingredients is store-bought. It's really straightforward to make. I put 6 ounces of fresh raspberries in a saucepan over medium heat, added 1/2 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of water, brought it to a boil, lowered the heat, and simmered it for 4 minutes. Next, I poured the cooked raspberries into a food processor, added a cup of store-bought seedless raspberry jam, a tablespoon of raspberry liqueur, and processed it until it was smooth. Then I poured it into a container and put the lid on. So the jam adds so much flavor to this and texture. It's great. Okay, baked Alaskas should be done. Whoa, how gorgeous are these? Woo! And a baked Alaska right on the top. Now, how gorgeous does that look? I mean, it's really restaurant food at home, but with store-bought ingredients, it's really easy.
Banana pudding, Jar-Faits.
Oh.
Yeah.
That sounds like a name I would,
Yeah, that's your name.
For sure.
I love that.
No
All right.
bananas in fruit salad. Instead, they're in the parfait where they belong.
That's true, right? Solid, staying solid. Enveloped in creams.
You didn't know I spoke French, right, GZ?
Yeah, you're very French, yeah. I love that idea. As a matter of fact, you know, you see that at breakfast a lot with granola and stuff like that, but it's so smart to do it for dessert.
Oh.
Well done.
Okay, obviously we know parfait, French for perfect, and I'm going to make a banana peanut butter Jar-Fait. Very simple. I want to show you the parts here. So this is just peanut butter that I've mixed with like whipped topping out of the tub. Then I've got some banana pudding. You can make it or just buy it in the tub. Some little mini vanilla wafers, and then obviously some banana. So on the bottom, I want to show you. I like to build the layers. So the first layer I like to put down is I love to dig deep for the peanut butter. And look how it's really nice and kind of mousse-like because we've blended it with the yummy whipped topping. It smells so good. You're gonna just wanna just actually start eating it right then and there. Then let's get some bananas into the game plan. I like to use them to push everything down. All right, some vanilla wafers. Just pour them in. Push those down as well. The more the merrier. I love when they're kind of like, you know, sweet nachos. Some are crunchy, some are soft, depending on how much contact they get with the pudding. And then, just over the top, some vanilla. Or you can do banana pudding. You can also go crazy and do chocolate pudding over the top and just have a complete banana chocolate extravaganza. And then you see I scooped out a little bit because I want to leave some room for a little bit of curb appeal. You gotta let them know what you're doing. And there you have it. Now, what makes this great for Mother Nature is it's a jar you can use over and over again. It's really full. But listen, if you don't overfill it like I just did right here, you put the little metal clamps on it and get it right into your cooler. And obviously, it's gonna stay nice and cold because we've got our iced tea packets, and you're good to go for your picnic. What do you think about those Jar-Faits, y'all?
Just eat that one right now, Sonny.
Oh, you don't have to tell me twice. If you haven't mixed peanut butter with whipped topping and dipped any kind of fruit in it, you're not living.
You got that oven occupied? The slow cooker is a fabulous way to make your desserts. I am going to make a slow cooker cobbler, and I'm using black cherries. I love using cherries and cobblers because they're so meaty and juicy. So I have some black cherries that I've thawed. I've reserved the juice from the cherries because I want to make a nice syrupy sauce with that. And that's a ½ cup of granulated sugar, a ¼ cup of cornstarch, a ½ teaspoon of cinnamon, a ¼ teaspoon of nutmeg. I'm gonna give it a whisk, then add ¾ cup of the reserved cherry juice. I decided to make a cobbler because what's more southern than a cobbler? And I thought it would be better to use the slow cooker so I can focus on everything else that I need to make. So you got that oven occupied. The slow cooker is a fabulous way to make your desserts. And as this gets nice and hot, it's gonna turn into this beautiful cherry syrup. And I'll pour this back into the slow cooker with those thawed cherries. Mix that around. All right, gonna make my topping. And I decided to just kind of lighten it up a bit. I'm using some reduced fat milk and a little less sugar than I normally use, but still great nonetheless. So for my dry ingredients, I'm using 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. It's gonna be fluffy and airy. ½ cup of granulated sugar, a ½ teaspoon of cinnamon, and a ¼ teaspoon of salt. Give it a whisk. All right, so I've mixed my dry. Now for my wet, 1 egg. And now I'm adding 2/3 cup of reduced fat milk. I have some melted butter. That's about 3 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter and a little vanilla extract. Give it a whisk. Break up that egg yolk. And now I'm going to add my wet to my dry to make my batter. Alrighty, so I'm gonna add my batter to the top of this. Okay, so I'm gonna cover this and cook it for about 2.5 to 3 hours on low. And when it comes out and it's nice and warm, I am gonna serve this with a scoop of ice cream.
When I have adults and kids coming for dinner, I always want to do something that both of them love. I'm gonna make a strawberry rhubarb crisp. So I've got 4 cups of strawberries, and I cut them in 1-inch dice, which means cutting most of them in half. 4 cups of rhubarb. I was really lucky to get really tender rhubarb. It's in season for such a short time, but when it is, I love it. 3/4 of a cup of sugar. And next I'm gonna do 1½ teaspoons of grated orange zest, and then later I'm gonna put the orange actually into it. One of the things I love about crisp is you can make any kind of crisp, and it's really seasonal. When apples are in, I make apple crisp. In the summer, I make peaches and blueberries or peaches and raspberries. It's a classic nursery dessert, but it's really delicious. Okay, so that's gotta be at least 1½ teaspoons right into the mixture. And then to thicken it a little bit, I'm actually gonna take the juice of the orange and some cornstarch, kind of like making a pie. Just something to absorb all the juices, and so it thickens it a little bit. So this should be about 1/2 cup of freshly squeezed orange juice and a tablespoon of cornstarch. It's a good idea to dissolve it in advance so you don't get any lumps in the fruit. Lumps, not a good idea. Just gonna pour it right in and mix it all together. Just give it a big toss. It's really important to cut the fruit in sort of big chunks because you don't want to end up with jam for this. You want to end up with fruit crisp. So this is the crumble topping, which is sometimes called a crisp. 1 cup of flour. I use pretty much the same kind of topping for each one. It's just the perfect amount of crumble and sweetness, and it's a good foil for the fruit. 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 1/2 cup of white sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Even sweet things need salt. 1 cup of oatmeal. I just think it gives it a really nice crunch. Okay, give it a little stir. I love the texture of the crispy oatmeal against the sweet fruit. So next is butter. I need 12 tablespoons of butter. I'm just gonna dice it up and then mix it into the bowl, and just mix it in until the butter's like the size of peas. Okay, that should do it. So this is what it looks like in the bowl. It's just big crumbles. And all I have to do now is just put it on top of the fruit. Just distribute it evenly on the top. You don't really have to cover the entire thing, but I think there's enough of the crumble topping that you will. This dish is about 11 inches long, 8 inches wide, and about 2½ inches deep. And it's perfect for this. 350 degrees for about an hour, and it's gonna be bubbly and juicy and crisp on the top. Okay, strawberry rhubarb crisp.
Oh, look at that.
Whoa. Wow, how's that? It's really hot. And a little vanilla ice cream. Whoa.
You're gonna eat that all up?
And would Carter like some?
Yes, please. I'll eat his.
Is that good?
Yep. Strawberry lemon cheesecake bars. And guess what? It's no bake. It's cold, refreshing. 1 box of vanilla wafers in a bag. And I'm crushing the vanilla wafers because it's gonna be the buttery crust for the strawberry lemon bars. All right. I'm melting 1½ sticks of butter. It's a lot of butter, but hey, you're making a cheesecake bar. You can't skimp on the butter. While that's melting, I'm gonna grab a lemon and some sugar. I'm zesting 1/2 lemon, so I wanna kick that lemon flavor up a notch. You know, now that I think of it, house names like Marty's are pretty common in my family. My grandmother's brother, his name was John Robinson, but we called him Snooky. Have no idea why we called him Snooky, but I always addressed him as Uncle Snooky. House name. So I've added 3 tablespoons of sugar. I want to add that hot butter directly to those crushed vanilla wafers. I want to add a heavy pinch of salt. This crust is so versatile. You can use it in a key lime pie. If you're making some type of like baked fruit, like grilled peaches, you can add it as a quick crumble. And I actually make a baked banana pudding cheesecake. And of course, banana pudding has vanilla wafers, so use a vanilla wafer crust. All right, that looks great. That is the bomb.com. I'm just gonna press down till it's even and leveled. And I've added the parchment paper to make it easy to pull out once it's done. Alrighty, so my crust is in the freezer. I'm going to get started on my cheesecake filling. I'm using, which is important, room temp cream cheese. I've tried to take the shortcut and not get this cream cheese at room temp, and it does not work. You won't get that nice and fluffy cream cheese filling if you use cold, mildly cold cream cheese. All right, so I'm using about 24 ounces. Here's why I love this no-bake recipe. It's summertime, it's hot. Who wants to turn on their oven in the summertime? I mean, here in Charleston, it's 100 degrees, past 100 degrees. It's hot. I'm not turning that oven on. I'm gonna beat my softened cream cheese till it gets fluffy with a little volume. So I'm gonna stop the process right now. A little bit of lemon zest. 2 teaspoons vanilla extract. All right, get this going again. That looks good to me. It's nice and fluffy, nice and silky and smooth. It's doubled in size, got a little bit of volume in there. Ready to add my lemon juice. 2 teaspoons, 2 cups, confectioner's sugar, added in 1 cup at a time. So I've made this recipe before for my mom and she loved it. The boys haven't tried it yet and I'm pretty sure they're gonna love it too. All right, I'm gonna add in the other cup, the final cup, confectioner's sugar. Get this started again. This is gonna be so light, so airy. Pop it in the fridge, take it out. Once it's chilled, it's gonna be cool, delicious, and refreshing. I'm gonna add in 1.5 cups of sour cream. It gives it that sharp tanginess and it just complements that lemon juice and lemon zest. Alrighty, pop this off. Fold in my whipped cream. And that's about 1 cup. Now, because it's no bake, you want that nice, airy, melt in your mouth effect, and that whipped cream does that. In the time that it took me to make this, my crust has already set up. It's fluffy, it's creamy, and it's gonna taste so good once it's chilled. That is done. I'm gonna pop this in the fridge. I gotta cut up some strawberries for the garnish. Cut the top off, cut it lengthwise. Nothing special. And I love using strawberries, especially in the summertime. It just screams summer. They're nice and sweet and ripe, very easy. I mean, lemon and strawberry go hand in hand, like strawberry lemonade. Just place them down. You can get fancy and create a little pattern. If you don't want to do a pattern, that's okay too. I'm putting on the strawberries now instead of when I refrigerated it because strawberries tend to get really, really watery once it sets. These will not get watery at all. I've zested a lemon. I'm gonna add that right on top. I'm gonna make sure I cut between the strawberries. I will eat this by myself, but I have to share. Y'all ready for dessert?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that is good.
That looks excellent.
There you go. Look at that.
Oh, that's good.
So I've got the apples, they look gorgeous from the farm, and now I'm just gonna make pie crust. I don't know why, but I think people find pie crust more daunting than anything else that we make. I'm gonna show you the secret of really good pie crust, and it's about very cold ingredients. So I'm gonna start with 3 cups of flour, just regular all-purpose flour. Tablespoon of sugar, and 1 teaspoon of salt. I use kosher salt. Now for the shortening. There are all kinds of debates about what kind of shortening to use for pie crust, but I actually combine vegetable shortening, and I do it very cold. It comes out of the refrigerator. And butter. And then you get all of the flakiness of the vegetable shortening and all the flavor of the butter. So that's 1/3 cup of vegetable shortening. And I have 1.5 sticks of cold butter that I've diced, and I actually put it back in the refrigerator until I was ready. So it's really cold. Put that right in. And now comes the critical part. What you want in the dough is little bits of butter and shortening through the dough. You don't want it totally pureed. And that's what makes it flaky. When the heat from the oven hits the butter, it causes steam to evaporate, and that's what makes it really flaky. So when you're doing this, make sure it's not totally pureed in the flour. I'm just going to pulse this about 8 times until it's like the size of peas. Maybe 10 times. So you can still see bits of butter and shortening in the flour. And that's what's going to make really flaky pastry. I'm going to do maybe one more pulse. Okay, so the next thing is ice water. And I need about 8 tablespoons, which is about a half a cup. So I'm going to pour out the ice. Excellent. So I'm going to turn this on. And just let it go around until it forms a ball. Okay, we're there. So now I'm going to refrigerate it for about 30 minutes. It's a really important part of making good pie pastry. Okay, now for the filling. Deep dish apple pie. 4 pounds of apples cut up in big chunks, and I'm going to flavor it with a little bit of orange zest and lemon zest. 1 tablespoon of orange juice and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. This not only flavors it, but it keeps the apples from turning brown. Half a cup of sugar. It all depends on how sweet the apples are. These are pretty tart. 1/4 cup of flour. And a teaspoon of salt. Okay, now for the spices. 3/4 of a teaspoon of good cinnamon. Half a teaspoon of good nutmeg. I love the way it smells. It smells like apple pie spices already. Okay, 1/8 of a teaspoon of allspice, which is really a pinch. And then I'm just going to mix it all up. And then right into the crust. This is a lot of apples for this pie crust, but I like it when it's piled high. Mile high apple pie. Okay, now for the top crust. Ready for the pie. Roll it up on the rolling pin. And roll it really gently over the apples. There's so many different ways to crimp a pie. I think everybody likes to do it the way their mother did it. But what I like to do is just roll the top crust underneath the bottom one. I want to make this really old-fashioned looking. Okay, once that's done, you can either crimp it with a fork. Crimping is about keeping the 2 crusts together so it seals in the juices. Or you can do it with your fingers. I think I'll do it with my fingers. Okay, crimped. Now, I'm going to do an egg wash. It's going to make the crust really nice and brown, which is 1 egg beaten with about a tablespoon of water or milk or whatever you have. Just brush the whole top. Okay, a little bit of sugar, make it nice and shiny. And then just a few holes in the top to let the steam escape so the crust gets nice and crisp. Sort of old-fashioned. Okay, into the oven, 400 degrees for about an hour and 15 minutes. Now that's an apple pie. And my favorite part is it makes the house smell fabulous.
Now, strawberry ice cream happens to be one of my favorite homemade flavors. It's so delicious. Now, the ice cream starts with a basic custard, and I use the same recipe no matter what kind of ice cream I'm making. I'll start by pouring 3 cups of half and half into a saucepan, and then I'll add 2 cups of sugar. Is it any wonder homemade ice cream is so delicious? Now, I'll turn on the heat, and I'll just stir this to get the heat going. And while that warms up, I've got a vanilla bean. Vanilla bean is something I always add to homemade ice cream. It adds just amazing flavor. It is one of my go-to ingredients, and it goes right into the half and half and sugar mixture. Now, I'll just stir this until it gets really, really hot before I move on. I have 9 egg yolks, and I whisked them just for a few minutes until they were nice and light yellow. That's the perfect color. Now I'm gonna temper these egg yolks. I'll take a ladle of the hot mixture, and while I whisk the yolks, I'll just gradually drizzle it in really, really slowly. We all know what happens if we add eggs to really hot liquid, so tempering the yolks just slowly brings them up to temperature. The bowl feels warm, and that's perfect. So now I can just pour it right in without any fear. Nobody should make ice cream with fear. Now I'm just gonna slowly cook this for a few minutes. So when it's thick enough to coat the spoon, it's done. Then it just gets poured through a fine mesh strainer into a pitcher. And this is where things get even better. 3 cups of heavy cream. It just gets added to the custard and stirred in. And that's the custard all done. Now it just needs to go into the fridge for a couple of hours. Now I've got to turn this into strawberry ice cream, and I'll do that by making a strawberry puree. I've just got a good amount of whole strawberries, and I'll add a little bit of sugar, just about 2 tablespoons or so. The custard is pretty sweet, so the strawberries don't need much. Now I'll just get the lid on, let the blender go. I'll just pour it in and swirl it around. I love it when it looks like a pink and yellow marble. Oh gosh, it's so pretty. Now I'll let the ice cream maker do the really hard part. I'll just pour in about half of this. This maker freezes about half of this quantity at a time. But that's okay, it is totally worth the wait. Get the lid on. Now it's just about patience. My machine takes about an hour to turn the custard into ice cream. Then it's just a matter of getting it into a freezer-safe container, covering it, and putting it into the freezer for a few hours until it's frozen. Oh, how pretty is this? I cannot wait another second. I'm gonna dig in. Do me a favor, don't tell my kids this is in the freezer. Let's just keep it between us.
Strawberry pie.
Strawberry pie!
Okay.
Strawberry pie.
Yeah, when he speaks with a southern accent, it's gonna be good.
To start off, we have a store-bought, yes, I know, crust. But it's beautiful.
I mean,
why not?
what?
I'm just
It's
shocked that
summertime.
you usually have, you know.
You know, it's summer. We want to spend a little less
Yes.
time in the kitchen with our guests. They're more
delicious, too.
Is that pie blind baked?
Yes, it is. So we have 3.5, 4 pounds of strawberries. What I've done is I've cut a few in a different way. So what I like to do is bake a strawberry base that I'm going to cook slightly, and then have some fresh strawberries that I've marinated to add when they're cold. So you get a different texture of
Interesting.
See, GZ, that's why it's okay for you to use the store-bought shortcut of the pie crust, because you're making the pie filling, and a lot of people would do both.
All right, we have the strawberries here. So these strawberries are just quartered. We have some that are diced. And into the diced strawberries, we're going to reserve these. I'm going to put elderflower, liqueur,
I love
a
that.
little sugar to let them marinate. 5, 10 minutes, that's it.
Why do you like the elderflower with this?
I just love the
Describe the flavor of it.
It's hard to describe. It's like a purple rain, you know?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Oh,
Okay,
man.
Paisley Park.
Look at
You know
this.
that gorgeous sort of floral, you're in the fields
It
after.
covers
Stick
your
with purple
whole
rain. I think the
everything.
whole world just
Purple rain,
understood.
people?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just gonna toss it like that, let it sit, and we've sliced them fresh for the top. These we're gonna put in a pan, just like this, okay?
You know my theory about strawberries?
What?
No matter how many times you look when you're chopping them, there's gonna be a leaf.
Right?
There is.
Yeah.
Sugar, cornstarch.
It's not a big theory, it's just a theory. Yeah,
Sugar, cornstarch, just about 3.5 tablespoons. And strawberry jam, just to get a little density to it, and fresh lemon juice. You're gonna let that cook for about 15, 20 minutes, not a lot of time. But you don't wanna denature the strawberry too much. And what's gonna happen is it's gonna look like this. Can you see this?
Oh, God, they want some vanilla ice cream.
Denature meaning you don't want it to be mushy. You still want some integrity.
Color's still there.
Oh,
It's
look,
not. It's,
look at that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay. So now to get that extra zhuzh, you know, we're gonna like make it like special. We're gonna take these beautiful marinated strawberries and we're gonna fold it in to the cooked strawberries. So
I
we have
like that.
3 kinds of strawberries: cooked, sliced, and raw. And just like this. Okay. It's a very simple dessert. Make sure at this stage it must be cold.
Okay.
Don't want to put the strawberries that are fresh into warm. It just kills the whole point of it. All right? And then we're going to put it into our crust.
Oh, that is bright.
Beautiful.
Bright.
Okay, yeah, with a B.
With a B. This goes in the fridge, probably 3-4 hours. You want to get it nice and cold. All right, I have one here that I've done a little earlier. Okay. And then the next step is some decoration. This has absolutely nothing to do with flavor, it's just decoration. Okay, so we're gonna take some very thinly sliced strawberries.
Hey.
And we're gonna go around like this.
You don't live in a, you don't live, I got it.
You're rich.
You're doing that. I got
Thank you.
Don't worry.
Thank you.
I got you.
You're gonna go in circles, just spiral all the way?
Concentric circle, spiral, I have one done.
Oh, look at this.
all right.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Hold on. So many pies laying around.
I count 3 pies. I'm doing pie mouth right now.
1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Back in the fridge, and that's what it looks like.
Oh, come on.
It's like a diner, almost a little diner.
Beautiful.
You left it open again,
Friggy.
Stunad. Come on.
No, my fridge guy's off tonight. So.
I got a fridge guy.
Got a fridge guy. Okay.
Who doesn't? Are we the only ones?
Who doesn't, exactly. Okay, so you ready? You ready? Who's tasting this?
Both.
Both.
So you don't want to do this when the strawberries are not fresh, because that's the point of it all.
You've ever heard of like the strawberry pretzel pie in the South?
Pretzel?
Oh, it's crazy, yeah. Pretzel crust.
I think I've read about it before,
A little
but
bit of cream cheese in there.
that's as far as I got. First pie slice.
First pie slice. It's like a first crepe, you know?
I tell you, you bring this to the potluck this summer, the barbecue, the dance marathon.
Yep.
Got a couple of them about to hit up this summer. You are going to be the star.
I'm going to get another slice. This
I'll take
boy.
the first slice, Jeezy. I don't mind
a little
the first
stickage,
one.
but it's okay.
We believe in you.
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
Little vanilla cream.
What kind of little chantilly cream? You got a little vanilla?
Well, we're back from church, and I'm gonna stick a blackberry cobbler in the oven. Blackberry cobbler goes perfect with pot roast. It's just a good, wholesome, comfort food-filled meal, and blackberry cobbler is one of my favorites. I always laugh when I say I'm going to make cobbler because everyone has their own interpretation of cobbler. Some people think of cobbler as fruit in a dish and a pie crust over the top. That's one version. Some people think of cobbler as fruit on the bottom and a biscuit topping, which I think is the technical version of cobbler. But I like a cobbler that's a little bit more cakey and poofy, and I think it's the real thing. The others are just imposters. So in a bowl, I've got a cup of self-rising flour, a cup of sugar, and then a cup of whole milk, cuppa, that's easy to remember. And then half a stick of melted butter. And that's it, and that right there is why I love this cobbler so much. If you make a cobbler with a pie crust, you have to cut the shortening into the flour and go through all those steps. If you do it with the biscuit topping, you have to make the biscuit dough, roll it out, cut it. This is about a 30-second batter to throw together. And the sooner I can get cobbler in my mouth, the happier I am. So the batter just goes into a buttered baking dish, generously buttered, of course. We wouldn't want the cobbler sticking to the pan. And then I just rinse some blackberries, no need to dry them. And then I just sprinkle the blackberries over the batter. And this batter is going to poof and bake around the blackberries, and it turns into something not of this world. And at the end, I just sprinkle on 1/4 cup or so of sugar. And that gives the crust that nice little crispness and sweetness, of course. And I like to serve this cobbler with freshly whipped cream or ice cream or both. Now this needs to bake for about an hour on 350 degrees. Did somebody say cobbler?
Oh, yes.
I know that's your favorite, Daddy.
You know older Southern women love a good old pound cake. So I am making them a citrus pound cake with a blood orange curd. So I've zested 1 orange and I've juiced 3 oranges. Now I'm preparing my dry ingredients. I'm using 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm using a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Give it a mix. Set that to the side. All right, now for my wet. I have 1.5 cups of softened, unsalted butter with 3 cups of granulated sugar. So I'm just gonna cream this together until it becomes light and fluffy. Now I have 5 eggs. I'm gonna beat them in 1 egg at a time. All right, so I've added my last egg. Now I'm gonna add my orange zest. Beat that in. So citrusy. If you love citrus, you're gonna love this recipe. All right, and I have a 1/2 cup of sour cream, also room temp. The sour cream helps the cake stay moist longer. So I'm gonna alternate between my orange juice, freshly squeezed orange juice, and that dry mixture, starting off with the dry. All right, slowly add in my orange juice. Oh, this smells so good. A little bit more of the wet, and I'm gonna end with my dry. All right, that looks good to me. Let me grab my bundt pan that I've buttered and floured. I'm just gonna spread my batter evenly across the bottom of this pan. This is gonna be a very citrusy pound cake. So the oven is preheated to 325. I'm gonna bake that for 1 hour and 15. And now it's time to get started on my blood orange curd. I'm gonna get my pot started. I have a 1/2 cup of sugar, a little blood orange zest, and I'm gonna mash this down to help release some of the oils from the zest. Blood orange is a little more tart than your typical like navel orange. I have 5 egg yolks, and this is gonna be the start of my curd. Give it a mix, get that sugar to start to melt. Now I'm going to add 2/3 a cup of blood orange juice. Look at that color. And the juice of this lemon. And I'm gonna add a pinch of salt. I'm just gonna cook this on medium-low temp. My curd has started to thicken. So I'm gonna turn the heat off and add a little butter. It's gonna give it a nice, smooth, and velvety taste. I'm gonna add a little bit in at a time. Mix it in, make sure it melts. Okay, add a little bit more in. I'm gonna strain this and then cover it and let it sit in the fridge and cool down a bit. And I'm straining this because I want just the curd and not the zest. Now, if you really love zest, you can leave it in there, but you want something that's really smooth, so it's best to strain the zest. If you put a curd or like a pudding in the fridge without it being covered, and you have to cover the surface, so you have to put the plastic right on top because you don't want a skin to develop in the fridge. Okay. My pound cake has been cooling for about 15 minutes. I'm gonna invert it into my cooling rack and let it cool down some more. This is always where I get like the most anxiety. Fingers crossed. 1, 2. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
My picnic by the pond, I'm making all kinds of portable food, including lemon bars for dessert. So I'm gonna start with 2 sticks of butter, 1/2 cup of sugar. Why do all my recipes start with 2 sticks of butter? It's for a party though. I'm just gonna cream those together. And then with the mixer on low, add 2 cups of flour. And 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Great. This is really a shortbread dough. It's so much easier to make. It doesn't require a rolling pin. I'm just gonna pat it right into the pan. Okay. Put it right into a 9 by 12 pan. Don't even have to grease the pan because there's butter in the dough. I'm just gonna flour my hands and press this out. I'm gonna chill it for about 15 minutes, and then later on I'm gonna make a wonderful lemon curd filling and pour it on top of the baked dough, and then cut them out in squares for my party. Okay, just chill for 15 minutes. For my picnic by the pond, I'm making lots of portable food, including lemon bars for dessert. I've got the crust all baked and cooled, and now I'm making the filling. So I've got 6 eggs, 3 cups of sugar. I'm just gonna whisk it all together. These are really lemony lemon bars. I've got lots of lemon juice and lots of zest in them, and great flavor. Okay, next thing is 2 tablespoons of grated lemon zest, which I've already got right there. Cup of fresh lemon juice. I can already smell the sharpness of the citrusy lemon. And the last thing is 1 cup of flour. Just put the flour in slowly so it doesn't get lumpy. And when this is done, I'm going to pour it onto the crust, put it in the oven, 350 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes until it sets. And when they're cool, I'm going to cut them in big squares and dust them with confectioner's sugar. Okay. Just pour it right in. Last thing is dessert lemon bars. I'm just going to dust them with a little bit of powdered sugar. These are so lemony, I can't wait for dessert. And I've cut 12 of them in this pan. It's always the first one that's hard to get out. Got it. Okay, we'll wrap it in parchment paper. Off to the pond to meet my friends.
I'm making blackberry cheesecake squares. Who doesn't love cheesecake? I'll start by making the cheesecake crust. I'm using a package of vanilla wafers for the cheesecake crust. A lot of times I use graham cracker crumbs, but there's just something about vanilla wafers. They're a little bit sweeter, a little bit more of a treat, and they make a delicious crust. I'm just adding about 1/2 cup of pecans. I love the flavor of the pecans and the vanilla wafers. Okay, then I'll just crush these up. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm gonna pulse the machine while I drizzle in a stick of melted butter. This will just help the crust come together. Okay, that's just right. Now I have a pan that I lined in foil and then sprayed the foil with nonstick baking spray. Now I'll just grab the crumbs and just pour them right in the pan. They smell so good. I could just grab a spoon right now and eat it as a snack. Okay, now I'll just use my hands to press it evenly all over the surface of the pan. The crust is all ready. Now I'll move on to the filling. And that's 3 8-ounce packages of cream cheese. They've been out for a little bit, so they're pretty soft. Usually when I make cheesecake, I make them in regular round springform pans. But for potluck, I always think that things should be in neat squares so when people go through the line, they can easily serve themselves. Okay, and then I'll add 1.5 cups of sugar, cream cheese and sugar. What a combination. Okay, and then I'll just splash in about 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. And then I'll just whip this till it's really fluffy. So I'm gonna crack in 4 eggs. Okay, just keep going. 3rd egg. Last egg. All right, now I have a package of sour cream. I'll add 4 ounces, otherwise known as half a cup. Just plop it right in there. That looks absolutely beautiful. Oh, so creamy and delicious. I get to lick the bowl, as usual. I definitely need a spatula. I don't want any of this to go to waste. Oh my goodness, who invented cheesecake? I think they should be sainted. All right, I just get all of that in there. Goodness gracious. One of the most beautiful sights in the world. Okay, I'll just spread it out so it's in a nice even layer on top. All right, now I'm just gonna bake this in a 350-degree oven for about 45 to 50 minutes. I topped the cheesecake with this beautiful blackberry topping. I'll tell you how I made it. So I threw a pile of plump, ripe blackberries into a pan with sugar and water. Then I brought it to a boil and simmered it for 4 or 5 minutes. Then, to thicken it slightly, I mixed up a slurry of cornstarch and water and stirred it into the blackberry mixture. Then I boiled it for another minute or so, and when it was cooled, I poured it over the cheesecake and popped it into the fridge to set. I'm hoping the foil will just lift the cheesecake right out, and it worked. I love it when that happens. And then I'll just cut it into really neat squares. I've got a really sharp serrated knife, and that makes it easy to slice through the blackberries on top. The other benefit to cutting the cheesecake into squares and putting it on a platter is that sometimes you can sneak a piece and no one will ever know. All right, all cut into squares. Now I'll just take the squares and get them on the platter.